Canto 3, Canto 3, Chapter 1, text number 21. Tatratha shushrava suridvinastim vanam yatha venujavahani shamshrayam samspardhaya dagdham athanusochan shvarashvatim pratyak iyaya tushnim. Word by word translation. Tatra, there. Atha, thereafter. Shushrava, heard. Shurit, kinsman. Vinastim, all date. Vanam, forest. Yatha, as much as. Venuja Vahini, fire due to the bamboos. Shamshrayam, friction with one another. Samspardhaya, by violent passion. Dagdham, burned. Atha, thus. Anusochan, thinking. Shvarasvatim, the river Saraswati. Pratyag, westward. Yaya, went. Tushnim, silently. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhasha, it came to know his knowledge that all his relatives has died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeds west, where the river Saraswati flows. Purport. Both the Kauravas and the Yadavas were relatives of Vidura, and Vidura heard of their extinction due to fratricidal war. The comparison of the friction of forest bamboos to that of the passionate human societies is appropriate. The whole world is compared to a forest. At any moment, there may be a flare up of fire in the forest due to friction. No one goes to the forest to set it on fire, but due only to friction between bamboos, fire takes place and burns the entire forest. Similarly, in the greater forest of worldly transaction, the fire of war takes place because of the violent passion of the conditioned souls illusioned by the external energy. Such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. Om Agyanati Mirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmitham Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Khadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Gunatam Tam Sajivam Swadvaitam Savadutam Parigana Shaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Ganchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpa taruvascha kripa sindhu vacha patithanang pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tava Kathamritam tapta jivanam kaviviriritam kalmasapaham Shravana mangalam Srimadatakam Bhuvi Grinnati Debhurida Jana Bhuvi Grinnati Debhurida Jana. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So, in this verse, we see that Vidura, well, he left Hastinapur just before the war of Kurukshetra started, and then he went into pilgrimage. So we knew that what happened. Vidura, he went to Dhritarashtra and advised him not to go for the war that we went through in previous verses. And well, Duryodhana heard about that. He became really angry. And that just shows that, how the anger, the 6 vices, actually works in our heart. So when we have all the 6 vices, which is like madness, anger, illusion, lust, envy, and greed, this actually creeps up in our heart, then it just takes us into such a dark place that even though the most sacred person or the person who can give the illumination of knowledge come to us and give us some good advice, because we are in so much darkness that we are not allowed, we are not able to see that light. Because that with Duryodhana, if you see the example, that his heart was covered with darkness. And when Vidura actually came and gave that good counsel to his father, and first of all he got worried that what if my father listens to him and asks me to withdraw from this battle and give the kingdoms back to Pandavas. Because that's what happened. That first of when someone actually get really attached to these material positions, the biggest fear is, what if I am going to lose it? So Duryodhana was definitely having that fear, and anything which comes and ignite that fear more, it actually makes him more and more violent. So Prabhupada here mentioned in the purport violent passion. So passion, we know that 3 modes of nature, the goodness, passion, and ignorance. And passion is the one which it's said that human being in the material world, mostly they are in mode of passion and ignorance. It's a mix of that. So Duryodhana was passionate, and then he becomes violent when he saw that someone actually comes and tries to hamper his plan. And his plan was always to get rid of the Pandavas by hook or by crook. So here, after Duryodhana came to know about that, he went to Vidura and he blasphemed him like anything. We know that how cruel he can be. He said such words to Vidura that he actually never ever heard from anyone. And then, when something like that comes from someone who is very junior, it's actually then becomes really, he was feeling he was heartbroken. That he was seeing that both the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they basically grew in front of Vidura. And when you see someone who actually grew in front of you from their very childhood and became a mature person, and then they come and then they started blaspheming you, start saying you all the very rude comments and everything. It's actually very painful. But anyway, Vidura already knew Duryodhana's nature, but even after that he felt the pain. And it's not, the pain wasn't there for Vidura, isn't because that he was feeling that, I'm getting told off, or all these bad things are being told to me. It's not because of that. He was feeling bad because of Duryodhana. And he was thinking that, he is going to get killed. Because he knew that if he is going to go to the war, where Krishna is not on his side, on the side of Pandavas, he's never going to win that battle. So, that's why he was he was quite sad. And he said that, look, I'm not going to see this thing in front of my eyes, these battles and everything, I'm going to just leave. So he left. He left Hastinapur and he started his journey. In those days, the spiritual life, in a way that when someone leave their house and goes away, it's kind of like they cut all their, all the connections. So it wasn't like today. Today is today's definition of the spiritual life. If somebody wants to, pursue in the spiritual life, the definition is different, obviously, because of different yuga, different time, place, and circumstance. But at those point of time, if somebody wants to pursue their spiritual life, they just leave, and they just cut all the connections behind. Even we see that up to the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother, his name was Vishwarup. He also took sannyas and he just left. He never came back. Similarly with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he was, he went back, he went away. But then, obviously, because of all the associates, he got connected, in a way with his family, so that with the request of Sachi Mata, he said, okay, I'm going to go to Jagannath Puri, not to Vrindavan. But usually, what used to happen that all the sages, the hermitage, they used to go to some secluded places and they used to spend time there. And obviously, spending submitting themselves in thinking, glorifying about the Lord. But obviously, these days we see a different thing, different culture. We see that if you have spiritual, and the other thing is spiritual life at that time was more like you're completely secluded, so you're not coming in front of anyone, and you're just doing your sadhana there. You are doing your meditation. But now it's a different way. So it's more you have to come in front of the people to actually make them understand what is the purpose of the spiritual life. Because people don't have the knowledge. In those ages, people used to go to these, these secluded places and to meet the sages, right? The sages never used to come to the locality or to the community where the grihasthas or the population, normal population used to live. They used to stay at their ashram, and people used to go and meet them there, right? But now it's in a different way. It's other way. It's the sages, they come and they meet with the normal people, normal population. And there is because of time, place, and circumstances, people don't have any knowledge of spiritual life. That in those ages, people do have knowledge that how spiritual life should be, because the varnashram was there. So in this age, there is no education on that, no knowledge on that. So that's why the sages, they have to take extra responsibility to come back and to go and meet with the people and make them understand that what is the purpose of spiritual life, how it can elevate them from this mode of passion and ignorance at least to the mode of goodness. Because without that, the peace and happiness that everyone is hankering for, it's not possible to get. And we see, that's Srila Prabhupada, he was spending time in the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, but then he was having a nice life there. He was doing his bhajan there, but at the back of his mind he knew that what his mission is in this Kali Yuga is to go to the West and preach the glories of the Lord. And that's what he did. At a very advanced age, he took all this hardships, and he went to United States of America and preached there. And we knew that first few years were so hard for him to go for being a sannyasi. Staying in Vrindavan, it's all you are basically getting all the favorable conditions. But when you go there, in outside there, especially somewhere like US, where it's between a hippie culture, it was all against. All the conditions were against for a favorable spiritual life. But still, he managed, and because he had this conviction that his Guru Maharaj, the instruction that he got from his Guru Maharaj, he needs to fulfill it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself predicts that the holy name will go to every town and village. So he was convinced, and that's how it happened. Now, that's why we see but then also we see others, others we see time to time, the so-called sages, rather than come and give this this knowledge of the Lord to the normal the population, they actually create a business. So they say, okay, so we'll go and we'll meet and we'll do a saptaha, a week-long rendition of reading from Srimad Bhagavatam or reading that. Or these days even it went into up a higher notch, because it become more professional in their way. The so-called spiritual gurus also started to being like that. Okay, we are going to have a spiritual conference. And all of you very well know that we see time to time spiritual gurus, so-called gurus, they go to different cities. And I'm not saying about small cities. They go to New York, they go to London, they come to Sydney, and having these 3 days, 4 days seminars. And and you can see 4,000, 5,000 people goes there, and they attend this seminars. But then what's the message there? Is there anything about? Are they talking about what is are they glorifying Krishna, or are they saying that what is the actual purpose of human life? No. What is the in those seminars? What is saying that how you're going to get out of this material anxiety? How you're going to have in some kind of meditation form or something like that? It will reduce your anxiety, and then it will bring happiness. Nobody is actually talking about the real problem. The real problem that we know that because of Srila Prabhupada, he gave us this knowledge that the real problem is the birth, age, old age, birth, and disease, death and disease. So these are the 4 things, but nobody is talking about that. Everybody is talking that, okay, what is your current situation and how you can improve that in this material world. But as per the Vedic knowledge, as we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, as all these exalted devotees are telling us that it's not possible. In this material world, there is no way that you can actually increase the quality of your life in the materialistic way. Because materialistic nature, this nature has been created actually to give pain to that living being. So when it has been built for a specific purpose, how you are going to get happiness out of it? It is there to give pain. It is not there to give happiness. But so-called these seminars, they are I was seeing one of the pamphlets there, that one of the seminars that happened in Melbourne. It's all about art of living, how you should manage, how you should manage your stress level, manage your anxieties and things like that. Do like this, do like that, and things like that. So it's almost like a corporate, similar to corporate like programs that they have, where they take their employees in a year to some kind of conference, so that they can give them 2-3 days of good time, like so-called good time, so that the rest of the year they can work like ass. So that's exactly the thing here also, that the spiritual so-called retreats, or not retreats, conferences, are all talking about material, how to get out of the material misery by using the material, all the materialistic things. But it's not possible. The main purpose is there is art of living. But for us, it's not art of living. What we actually prepare ourselves, what we read in our scriptures, is art of dying, because we know that the main problems, the only way of getting out of that, get rid of that, if you get out of this cycle of birth and death. If you can get out of this and go back to Godhead, that is the only solution. But nobody is talking about it. Everybody is talking about art of living. So art of dying is something that you can find in these scriptures. Because art of dying is saying that you have to make sure that you lead your life in such a way that at the time of death, you remember Krishna. And Krishna promised in Bhagavad Gita that at the time of death, whoever remembers me, they will go back to Krishna. And that's it. If you go, even someone says, okay, no, I don't want to do it, but I want to do some philanthropic work, I want to do this, build some school, build some hospital. Yeah, good things. Yeah, it's much better than get involved into war, get involved into black marketing and all those things. But doing those also, it's not going to take you out of this cycle of birth and death. You'll still come back, because then you will have a good karma that you have to go through. But coming in this material world, even if you go through your good karma, even if you go through, a person who lives in the slum and a person who lives in multi-million-dollar mansion, both were subjected to COVID last, when COVID was there. COVID wasn't that, there wasn't any differentiation that, okay, the person who is in the slum, they will not be getting affected by COVID, and they are the only one who will be affected by the COVID, and the person who is in the $1 million mansion, they will not be affected by that. So that's the thing. If you are in, and that's with everything, if there is a cyclone comes, if there is any other catastrophe come, the three kleshas, the three types of miseries, Adidevik, Adibhautik, and Adi-Adhatmik, they don't differentiate that. If it doesn't matter, and that's what Srila Prabhupada gives that example, that if someone does the philanthropic work, what happened, that they could get some good karma. So you're still in the jail. So suppose you are in the jail, all of us are in the jail in this material world, and you do some good work, they will give you a nice room in the jail. So you're still in the jail, you still don't have the freedom to get out. You still, you don't have your freedom. You are still under all those rules and regulation, but you are in a room. That room is a little bit better than the other person. So other person room is ghastly, it's ugly, it's dirty, but your room is nice. But at the day's end, that person is also in a cage, and you are also in a cage. So that's why it needs to understand that what is the way of going out of this continuous cycle. So that's why the spiritual life that we started this discussion, at that point of time, the sages, and that's what Vidura wanted to get out. And although he was he was very knowledgeable, and he was he was a saint, but still he wanted to spend time to go to the pilgrimages and meet with the sadhus, meet with the sages, and understand what is the want to get more and more knowledge about spiritual life. And that's what he started. And that's where, like, in this specific verse, it says that in the place of Prabhasha, he came to know that his relatives, most of them are dead. And here, how it's mentioned that that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burned due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. So that is like, again, with Duryodhan, like, they were like, trying to have this passion, and they were just attacking the Pandavas. And at some point of time, the Pandavas, like, Krishna said, okay, yeah, that's enough. Now we have to go for war. Krishna, like, he himself went for as a peace messenger, but still, as we said at the beginning of this discussion, that Duryodhan was he had this dark veil of ignorance, that he couldn't understand. Like, whatever good thing was said to him, he just completely ignored it. Like, if you can relate it to it, that if you really dislike a person, if you really, really, really dislike a person, right? If that person comes and tells you the most, favorable things, most advantageous thing for you, you will just completely will not listen to that person, because you just dislike that person. If that person comes to you and says that, hey, I think you should do this and this will be really good for you, and you will think, no, I'm not going to listen to this person. And that's how it happened. That's how, when we have these 6 vices in our heart, so it just makes us so violently passionate that we just completely ignore, that we just don't want to do anything. And then what happened, that when these people, and most of the population is like this, unfortunately, when one comes to contact with another, right, they just started with each other, they had this friction. And it's very interestingly mentioned here in the purport. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that in the fire you don't need, in the forest, no one needs to go there and light a match to start the fire in the forest. It's just when those 2 branches or something, they are like really dry, and because the wind is blowing and they are having friction with each other, and suddenly there is a spark. And it's not like a full fire, there is a spark. And because there are so many dry leaves and everything, and because we are very aware of this, because of the bushfire situation in Australia, and that's how the bushfire, this fire starts. So and that's the same way that the violently passionate people come in contact with each other. You don't have to do anything. You just see they come near to each other, and then the fight starts. And everyone, everyone wants to satisfy their ego. There is, and we see, in our modern history, you had the Hitlers on the one side, you have the Churchill on the other side, and then some or other, and then they start the war. That's it. They wanted something, and then suddenly start. And that's how the starts of the World War. And we, after 1945, we didn't have any world wars, but the wars and there are different kinds of wars now. We have economic war, we have intellectual wars. There are different, it's not as in a more elaborate way that we had the world wars, in the 1940s, but now it's a different kind of war. It's people are everyone, and then we have different mediums now that we didn't have before. Before the spiritual life, when someone completely cut their connection, there is no way that you can contact with your friends or family or something like that. Now, everyone is on different platforms, Facebooks, Instagram, blah blah blah, and things like that. Even someone goes away, you can find it within 5 minutes where that person went. So these mediums are also putting a fuel, in those wars. So these mediums, it all started as a benefit for the human being, so that we remain connected. But by remaining connected, rather than having information, it gives more misinformation, which actually get misinterpreted. And when it gets misinterpreted, then someone thinks that, and someone make one comment, someone made another comment, and then there is another war started. So it's like, I think the word is trolling. Like, somebody goes and somebody makes a comment, and then the people go and start trolling them. Hey, why did you say that? And blah, blah, blah. That's a different kind of war. And people are spending hours and hours and hours on those wars. And now you don't have to go to the military to get into a war. You can get war by just simply logging to your social media. So all these things are happening. And then when someone, time in, time out, like, in a course of the day, they are just in this under this kind of environment. Just imagine when they will come out at the end of the day, they are like fully exhausted, fully drained out of their emotions and everything, like it's gone because you have done all these things throughout the day. Then when you go to sleep, you can't sleep properly because it has been because when the brain sometimes worked overtime, it actually doesn't allow you to sleep. And then when you don't have sleep, then you start to lose your health. When you start to lose your health, then you start to lose your, you don't have control on your mind and intelligence, and then you go into all this, you start to lose things, and then you go into depression, and then there is anxiety. And that's how the perfect scenario in this Kali Yuga. People just go into depression and depression. So, speaking out all this depressing thing, but this is the truth at this point of time. But then what is mentioned, that how to get out of it. That Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport that the only way to get out of this forest fire, right, the only way is when there is water coming, like when there is rain coming. Or like we see in Australia, they take water from the sea in a helicopter, and they go to those places where there is big fire, and they just like rain, they put the water on top of that fire in those areas, right? So similarly, we see that's how our that is the way to actually get out of the fire. So how to get out of the fire of the material life? And that is how our gurus, our parampara has given us, that we start, Srila Prabhupada has given us that we start our morning prayer with that, right? Samsara davanala. Samsara davanala naladida loka tranaya karunna ghana ghanatnam. Right? So when the samsara davanala, we are in the midst of this material fire, right? And there is we see that all these things are happening towards us, and we don't have, when what's the thing with the bushfire, when there is a forest fire, then basically what happened, that you lose the way, that there is no way of getting out because the fire just surrounds you. And then ultimately we see all the animals and things like that, they just die by burning out of that fire. When we see that we are in the middle of the material world, and then this fire surrounding us, then we are looking for the Tran. Tran means relief, right? Tranaya karunna ghana ghanatvam. So we see that relief is coming as a mercy from our spiritual master. The Lord sends that mercy from our spiritual master. So if we follow the instruction that Srila Prabhupada has given us, and that we have received through our bona fide parampara, then basically we will be able to get out of this fire. Otherwise, this we will still be in this fire, in this fire, but then it will not affect us, right? We'll have this, how you see that those firefighters, they wear those suits that actually the fire doesn't affect them. You can still feel the heat, but it's not burning you, right? So similarly, when we actually start our spiritual life by following the rules and regulation, then we get that kavach. That is the tran for us, the relief. So when we get that, then actually what happened, that we get some relief out of this material world. And we can focus on our spiritual life. Because if you don't have that relief, then it's very hard. You can't focus on spiritual life. If you are so much disturbed, if you're so much under anxiety and things like that, you can't focus on spiritual life. Spiritual life requires a focus. And we see that at least we said, okay, in a day, with whatever is prescribed for us, we have to do the chanting. And that chanting is a couple of hours, right? For 16 rounds. Now that 16 rounds, if you have so much thing going on in your head, and you are so much disturbed and things like that, those 2 hours, like, you'll not be able to, like, you're just chanting. Yes, you can finish your rounds, but then, like, it's just like a mechanical thing. So the way that to concentrate on the name of the Lord, to meditate on Him, if your mind is so much disturbed, it's not going to happen. The only way the mind will be peaceful, if you retract yourself from these materialistic activities. That doesn't mean that you give up your responsibility, like, we are not saying that, like tomorrow, give up your job, give up all this, your family responsibilities. No, it's not like that. If you are in Grihastha ashram, you still have to do all the responsibilities, but then your focus shifted. That rather than you see that you are the person who is doing this, you see that, okay, Krishna is the doer. Krishna is doing all these things. And you are just mere an instrument. And you are just there to serve the Lord. When that shift happens in focus, then someone actually, they have peace of mind, and then they can focus on the spiritual life. And without that happening, without focusing on the spiritual life, it is not possible that we can get out of this fire. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is finishing the purport with the line, and we will finish the class with that. Such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. So thank you very much for joining today. And in the next verses we'll see that how Vidura is going to meet all the sages, and he is going to, this wonderful conversation obviously will start with Maitreya Rishi. So thank you for joining. Granthrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.